Today, we're going to break down one of the most successful movements in human history. But we're not looking at it through the lens of theology. Nope, we're looking at it through the lens of pure strategy.
I mean, really think about that. It's a question any founder, any leader, any visionary has to face. When you have an idea that completely challenges the way things are, how do you even get started? Well, in 7th century Mecca, the Prophet Muhammad's approach was completely counterintuitive. You'd expect a grand announcement, right? Instead, his mission began with 3 full years of careful, quiet, and private outreach.
And let's be clear, this wasn't about hiding. This was a totally calculated first step. This was the strategy of privacy. Now, this distinction is absolutely crucial. The early call wasn't secret, it was private. A secret is something nobody knows is happening. This was more of an open secret. Rumors were definitely spreading. People had heard whispers about the message. But, and this is the key, without a big public declaration, there was nothing for the authorities to officially push back against. The prophet was talking to friends, to trusted individuals, not shouting from the town square. So why wait 3 whole years? Well, this period was all about building a solid foundation. It gave him time to gather a core group of committed believers without immediately triggering a massive backlash. You know, these early converts were often from the lower classes, people who didn't have much to lose by shaking things up. They had time to really learn the message, to let their faith grow strong, and to become the future leaders of this new movement. It was like a spiritual and strategic boot camp.
Okay, so after 3 years of building this core, the time came to shift gears. It was time to take the message to a much wider audience. It was time to go public. But even this wasn't just a sudden free-for-all. It was a really methodical 2-stage launch. First, he gathered his closest relatives, his own clan, the Banu Hisham, for a meal. This was a direct pitch to his inner circle. And only after doing that did he move on to stage 2, a public declaration to the entire city from a famous hill, Mount Safa.
So imagine this. He's standing on that mountain, and he doesn't start with a big sermon. He starts with a question designed to establish his credibility. See, he was already known throughout the city as Al-Amin, the trustworthy one. So when he asks this, he's basically saying, look, you all know my character. You know I don't lie. Are you going to trust me now on something far more important? And of course, they all agreed. He had their trust.
And once he had that trust, he hit them with the core of the message. And wow, it was a message of radical personal responsibility. He told his closest family members, even his own beloved daughter Fatima, that their family name and his love for them couldn't save them. No, each and every person was responsible for their own salvation.
As you can probably guess, this kind of public message created immediate conflict, and that led directly to a major confrontation and the need for some serious protection. You have to understand, in the tribal society of Mecca, you couldn't just attack someone. Every single person was protected by their clan and its chief. The prophet's protector was his uncle, the powerful and respected Abu Talib. So the leaders of Mecca went straight to him. They tried to shut the whole movement down by using the existing power structure. And the choice they gave him was stark. It was brutal. The pressure they put on him was immense. They basically said, either you make him stop or you revoke your protection and let us deal with him. For a tribal chief, this was an unthinkable dilemma. Do you betray your own family or do you defy your entire society? Abu Talib, feeling all this pressure, went to his nephew and pretty much pleaded with him to stop. And this was the prophet's response. It was absolute. There was no room for negotiation, no compromise. This was his mission, and he was going to see it through or die trying. In seeing that unwavering, unshakable conviction, Abu Talib made a choice that would change history. He stood by his nephew. He chose family and principle over politics and pressure, promising his protection no matter what it cost. That decision, right there, was the shield that allowed the new Muslim community to survive the intense persecution that came next. And this whole situation with his family brilliantly illustrates a core theme of this new movement. Just look at his 4 uncles, all sons of the same man. One becomes a celebrated martyr, another becomes a respected companion. Abu Talib, his greatest protector, never actually converted, but earned immense respect. And then you have Abu Lahab, who became his fiercest enemy, the only person cursed by name in the entire Quran. The message couldn't be clearer. It's not about your bloodline, it's about your actions and your faith.
So, this early story of protection and conviction, it's just one piece of a much larger puzzle. If we zoom out, we can actually see how this whole approach evolved over the prophet's lifetime into a really adaptable framework.
Scholars have outlined these 5 distinct stages of what's known as the dawah, or the call to the faith. And what's fascinating is that each stage was a legitimate strategy that was perfectly adapted to the community's circumstances at the time. It all started with that private call we talked about. Then it moved to a public call, preaching with patience even while being persecuted. When they were attacked, it shifted to defensive fighting. Once they had political power, the priority became treaties and diplomacy. And finally, it became an open call to any power that stood in the way of the message. This shows a pragmatic, evolving strategy, not some rigid one-size-fits-all plan.
So, at the end of the day, what can this ancient blueprint for change teach us now? It shows that launching a world-changing idea isn't just about having passion. It's about patience, it's about structure, it's about knowing when to be private and when to go public. And it's about building a solid core, establishing your credibility, and standing firm in your convictions, especially when it feels like the whole world is against you.